Okay, how's everybody doing tonight? Good? Everybody get the pin load entered in, or does this need to stay up there for a second? Okay, while you're entering that in, let's just talk about schedule this week. There's no class on Thursday because of faculty training day, but there will be, I'll talk about in a second, in our week assignment. There will still be an assignment for you to do. You're going to continue to do the lab this week, and we'll go over that. You can do that at home and answer a few questions I put in there for you. And then next week, Tuesday we'll meet as always. We will also have our lab on Tuesday next week though. It's going to be an in-class lab. And then next Thursday, no class for to work on your research paper presentation. I'm going to keep that schedule as is, okay? And so, everybody get the pin in? No? Okay. Let me write up on the board there. Okay, so let's recap here. I wrote it on the board for you. So no classes Thursday due to faculty training. Thursday, complete the lab at home. Inside here, there's a lab for the hiding drives lab, and there's a download that you have to install at home. And then there's some questions in there. I'll go ahead and open that up and show you real quick. It's a TrueCrypt lab. This is the tutorial, and this is a download to the program. Now, when you download the program and install it, it will ask you to launch the tutorial. You can just wait and install it, and it'll launch it automatically. I just put that link up there at the top just in case it doesn't launch for some reason. But you'll go through the first tutorial, which basically walks you through the program. It walks you through a little tutorial that has you create a 5 meg hidden partition using this program. So it shows you how to create a hidden partition, how to encrypt it, and then how to decrypt it on the fly. And at the end of the lab, I want you to answer a few questions, which is how can this program be used to secure documents, how can this program be used for illegal purposes, and then what are some ways you can catch this type of activity on a network. And so just kind of give me your thoughts, as we kind of usually discuss anyway during the lab. So any thoughts you might have on ways you might be able to catch this type of activity, or you might say, I don't really know of a way we could catch it. Just be honest with your opinion. And so at the end of this lab, you'll basically understand TrueCrypt, which is a free program to use, and it's a fairly widely used program, and it's updated all the time. And what it does, like it says, like I just mentioned, it creates an on-the-fly partition, which basically encrypts that partition, and then as you add files to that partition, and that partition can be anywhere, on your hard drive, on a USB drive, as you add files to the partition, it encrypts them. As you take files out of the partition, it decrypts them, okay? And so when you turn off the program or unmount the drive, say you create a 5 gig drive or 5 gig partition, when you unmount it, it unmounts it to one file only. And you can make that one file no extension to where it's truly a hidden type of file or an unknown file to Windows. And so there are uses for this in government, in high-tech, high-security firms that want to secure data, because the program itself can actually run off a USB drive, the TrueCrypt program, and then you can basically just put it in a USB drive on a computer, laptop, whatever, and run it and mount that drive while you're working on it. And then when you're done, you unmount it, stop the program, take the USB drive out, and all that's on that computer is one file. And it has no extension to it. And the only way it can be opened is with this program, which creates basically a partition out of it when it's done. And so it's a pretty cool lab. I want you to continue to do it for this week, though, so when you're finished, just answer those questions. And again, you don't have to do it until Thursday, okay? So questions on that? So no class on Thursday because of faculty development, but I still want you to do the lab, okay? Well, tonight we're going to go over security audits, but before we go over the audits, I want you to bring up on your computer, I'll switch over here to my Windows machine. We're going to look at events, the event logs within Windows, show you how to use that and what the purpose is for it. And so if you look on the overhead, I'll show you how to get to this in a second, but if you look on the overhead, in an event viewer, it shows different things that have went on in the system, like today, here's today's date. This is application event viewer. These are all events that happen on this computer. This is a SVC service has stopped. And if I click this down there, it'll go to the next one. And so as I keep going down these, it just gives me information about things that have happened on this machine, day by day, hour by hour, whenever they happen. So that's application. Microsoft Office sessions. Here's one for 3/20/2013. It says here there was a version lasted 3,019 seconds with 2,040 seconds of active time. This session ended normally. And I don't know if you knew this, but since 2010 it does this. It keeps a session time of everything that you do in Office now in a log file in Windows. So someone like a manager could come by and say, you say, well, I worked 10 hours on Word. They're going, oh, really? This only says you worked 5 minutes. You came in. Oh, this one said you lasted 8 seconds and you were done. How do you know that? Because it's on a log file. It keeps a log of everything. And so this is really just to keep track of activity. But you can copy things here. Like I could copy this. When I click this, it copies it to a clipboard and I can email it. So that's Office sessions. And they have security. This is just for security audits. There was one ran back a while back. This just runs through a security audit that passed. But then the next one is system. System, if I click on, like, say, for instance, category, notice here it has installation category. Keep scrolling down. I think that's the only one really on categories, installation. Source, here's anti-malware. It says Microsoft anti-malware was updated. Here it says the anti-malware has encountered an error trying to update. So anytime you see an X, that's it. And then there's a warning saying it's detected malware, other potential unwanted software. And it actually gives the name of it and severity of it, where it's found, and usually how to go and fix it as well. So each one of these will have different warnings depending on the category. So you can search by category, you can search by event. Windows Update Agent just gives the different updates that were done on this machine. Or you can lastly search by date to determine what's happened recently. So let me show you how to get to that. If you'll just go and click on the Start button on your computer, right click on My Computer and go to Manage. So Start button, right click on My Computer, go to Manage, and on the left side you'll see Event Viewer. Double click on Event Viewer and you'll see what I have on the overhead. Okay? So let's go over briefly what these event viewers do by detail or by description, I guess. First is application, just gives application error records. Internet Explorer gives custom log error records to Internet Explorer. And then you've got O alerts, which are just, these are alerts built on this machine. Office diagnostics, Office sessions, already went over that. Security, those are just audit records. And last one, system. Like say if someone's trying to attempt to log in a computer unsuccessfully, it'll have a red X and it'll say login failed. So as a network admin, you can actually go by machines or have this file logged to you or emailed to you periodically. And if you see X's on login, say it's 6 o'clock at night and everybody leaves the building at 5, that might be a problem. Okay, somebody might be trying to get in, and they are trying to get into machines. It could be a maintenance crew, it could be somebody staying over, trying to get on somebody else's computer. But it'll give you in that security log event viewer, it'll give you every attempt and what time they attempted it to log in a computer if it's unsuccessful. And so that would be found in the system one. And so system one has everything from logins to Microsoft Updates, service control manager. Like if I go to this one today, let's start at the very beginning of the day, 326. There was an event log where Service Pack 3 multiprocessor became free. Event log started. This is right when the computer started up. Let's get into the network was established at this time. So as the computer's actually starting up, you can see events happening starting at 339:48. It has one here, that couple that failed. So these are all service packs or service controls that have started up. And you usually have the user on here as well. I can sort by user and see if there's any activity there. Most of you are going to be local service or NA. Here's one at the bottom. This was actually the instructor user had a WMI performance adapter was successfully started on both of these. So event viewers are used, and they can be sent, by the way. Like I said earlier, you can send these events either open the file itself. You can click on these one at a time and copy them. I can right-click on any one of these and save these as a log file. If I click a file, save as log file, it'll prompt me to save it as an EVT, which is an event text, and then I can export that for further review. And so it's helpful to have, especially it's used for mainly people trying to log in, failed login attempts on computers or on servers, failing to connect to service packs, failing to connect to updates, failing to connect to, it'll even track in there if it found malware, found a virus, it'll put a timestamp on there. And then the new one, as of Office 2010, it starts tracking everything a person does in Office. The time, how long they were on the session actively, because it's the difference between open and active. Active means they're doing something on the actual program in Office. And so they can have it open 8 hours, but only be active 5 minutes. It'll actually tell you in the log, it'll denote the difference, whether they're active, how long they've been active, how long they've been actually on. So that's the event log. Now I'm going to switch over to, I have a file here I was wanting to look at a little bit deeper on that. And this is on Windows Vista, but it's pretty close. So I'm going to switch it over. This document just goes over reasons to use it. I went over a few, but this one goes over some more. And this is going to say Vista in it, but it can refer to Windows 8 as well. So reasons to view the master event viewer. We've already mentioned some of these, but to solve a specific problem, discover why a machine is performing slowly, prevent nuisances from developing in the path or into disasters. I've already showed you how to do it. There is a command prompt as well. Excuse me, that you can basically just type in EVE and it'll prompt that in the start run command. Start run command should put EVE as a run just by going to start run, and then instead of CMD it's EVE. It's not going to work on XP, it'll work on Vista and higher. And so if you guys have, most of you guys have 7 at home, so you're good to go there. Or 8, right? You guys have 8 as well. How many has 8 already at home? Okay. It'll work on 7 or 8. So once you get Event Viewer started, I've already went over the different ones to use. It does have some new ones that are not in XP I wanted to mention. that you have available to you. There's new event logs as of Vista. 2 of them, actually, one called Setup and one called Forwarding Events. And what these allow you to do is actually set up your own logs. So I want to find out when people log into my website at work. I want to find out when people access this program and at what time. And I want to send me a log once a week of that activity. I want to send a custom log doing that and set it up and forward it. Kind of like you guys do with mail, setting up rules in mail, a mail program. You could do the same with Viewer, setting up custom logs for you. This just goes in different ways to set up custom views, which you can do, which you couldn't do before in XP. You set up custom views in Vista and Forward, Vista and On. And that's about it. Basically, it's probably a good idea to view it, at least at work. Generally, they go through these type of logs at least once a year. And then if you're having issues, you go through them as well to determine what problems a computer is having and why. Okay? So that's the event viewer. Most people don't know about it, but it is there, and it can be used to track activity and to track malicious activity, plus it can be used to be tracked just regular, as with Office example, tracking productivity within an Office environment. Now, do most managers know about this? You're like, thank God they don't. No, just kidding. All right. And so most managers do not know about this, but it is available. When you become an IT manager, or when you become a manager, you can use it if you have suspicions on things, you can actually check to make sure people are doing what they say they're doing. Do what? Oh, I agree. Okay, so vulnerability assessment. You look at some of the, let's see, we went over that part already. Am I in the wrong one? I'm in the wrong one, sorry. That's what we want, security audits. It's in the wrong one. There we go. So first thing is in machines you've got what's called auditing. We've already went over that, where to find it in Windows, but there's also other softwares you can get to determine what users are doing on a computer. There's the Microsoft software, there's open source software, there's free software, paid software to do this. But one of the ones that you want to do periodically on a computer network sweep is what's called privilege auditing. It's where, well, the word privilege can be considered a subject's access over an object. And so if you're seeing on a machine or on machines a lot of errors and they can't access certain things or they can't do certain things, that might be because they don't have access to it. More than likely it is. And you might need to check network security, file security, make sure people can get into things they need to get into. But there's a principle called least privilege, which basically is users should be given only the minimal amount of privileges needed for his or her job function. I agree partly with that. There are times where people get new software or new hardware, and instead of IT wasting time on giving them more privileges, if it's a local machine issue, I'm from the state of mind that people should have as many rights as they need to do what they job, pretty much administrator rights on a local machine to do their work. Now granted, you're going to be able to block them out, or should block them out of networking files, networking folders, things of that nature. Privilege auditing is where you just review machine by machine their privileges over what object. An object can be a program, a folder on a network, to determine whether or not they need higher security or maybe need lower security, depending on the results of the audit. Privilege management is a process of assigning, revoking privileges to objects. Active Directory is an example of this. Active Directory gives you rights to add or take away rights to users in a group, to where, say, you're a part of a marketing group, half of your marketing here, half of your sales. I can say, okay, marketing needs access to these folders and these printers, and sales needs access to these folders and these printers, and you guys can't touch each other on the network. You can't touch each other's printers or folders or even see them. And so by managing those rights, it's called privilege management, and the roles of the owners and custodians are generally well established. They're generally fit into the organization upon usually the structure of the organization. As I just mentioned, sales and marketing would be a structure, so you'd actually have on the network a structure called sales and a structure called marketing, and add rights to those users. And as people get hired, as people get fired, as people transfer, it's as simple as moving those user objects out of those roles into the roles they're going into. Okay? So if you have a group set up in Active Directory, which is the most common way to do it, you basically, a person gets hired in marketing, they're added, created a new user and added into the marketing group. And they have all the rights and privileges of a marketing personnel. If they move to sales, you just move that user object to the sales object or sales group, and now they have the rights and privileges of the sales group. And the responsibility for privilege management can be either centralized or decentralized. And centralized would be like Active Directory on a server. Decentralized would be per computer, which you wouldn't want to do. Okay, especially on larger organizations. If it's a small organization, you get by with it, but larger organizations would probably use like Active Directory. So in privilege management, in the centralized structure, I've talked of one example of Active Directory as being a good example of assigning objects with certain privileges or revoking those privileges. A decentralized would be basically you would put them on it's going to be more of a closely tied to a geographical location or the end user itself. Generally, when you hear the word decentralized, it has to do with that computer itself. You're assigning rights just to that computer user, and that's it. So when you're assigning privileges to a computer, a couple of models that are used. One is called mandatory access control, discretionary access control, role-based access control, and rule-based access control. When it comes to Active Directory, it's more of a role-based role, whatever role you are, and then secondary would be rules. So roles first. So if you're an administrator, that's a role. But say if you're an administrator in marketing for that department, you don't have as much privileges as, say, the network administrator. You're just an administrator for that department, those people in that department. Those people would be such as like managers of those departments would have the administrator role to be able to do certain things for their users, give them certain rights. So when you're auditing security systems on a computer or on a privilege network, whether it be local or network, either one, you're going to go into what's called group policies. And group policy editor on computer, I'll give you a command. This is the group policy command prompt for group policy editor on Windows. If you go ahead and do a start run on your Windows computer and type that in, you're not going to get much on these computers because we've stripped them down for the most part. Gpedit.msc. Did you guys get it on gpedit.msc? I renamed mine to Gpedit123 when I was showing somebody earlier how you can secure it. Okay, and that's how you basically secure Gpedit. Gpedit is found in the root of the C Windows directory, okay? And the way to secure this is you can rename it to something else, which I did on my instructor machine, to gpedit1234.msc. Most users, again, don't know about Gpedit, but what Gpedit does is it lets you go into the group policy editor of that machine, and you can lock down. On these machines, we have them pretty much locked down already. You're not going to be able to do much with it. But at home, you'll definitely do a lot. Group policy editor at home, you'll be able to do things like hide the control panel. You can hide system settings within IE. You can hide, or you can disable people from installing programs. You can do what's called a whitelist, meaning only these applications can run, everything else cannot run, all within Gpedit. On these machines, I'm trying to think, it's very limited what we can do, but let me see if I can show you one of the examples here that we can do. Switch over and play with it real quick. Again, we're pretty much locked down here, but let me see what we can do. Now, one of the things when you're working with the group policy editor, you might make note of this. Always keep it open while you're playing with it, and never close it until you've put it back the way it was before. And do one at a time as you're playing with it, because you can lock yourself out of your PC. So let's see here what I can get into real quick. All right. Nope, don't want that. Okay, maybe this here we can play with. Okay, let me see if I can get to mine. I'll have you guys do yours. Okay. All right, so here's one we can play with. This isn't going to hurt anything. If you go underneath User Configuration, on the left side, expand Windows Settings, double-click on Internet Explorer Maintenance, and on the right side, you should see one of the options is Browser User Interface, and the description says Title, Bitmaps, Logos, etc. Everybody see that? Double-click on that where it says Browser User Interface, double-click on that, and then double-click on Browser Title. Now, before we do anything, I've already got my name in there. You can go ahead and do the same with yours, but don't click OK yet on this. I wanted to just show you everything in Group Policy Editor. We'll give you a description of what it's getting ready to do. It'll tell you what it's going to do. This one says you can customize the text that appears in the title bar of Internet Explorer. The text is appended to the string Windows Internet Explorer provided by. For example, if you enter an Acme in the field below, it would be Windows Explorer provided by Acme. So a lot of companies will do this to customize their Internet Explorer installation for each browser, okay? And so when you put your name in here and click Apply, this should still be able to hit Apply for you, I'm thinking. You hit Apply. Is that enabled for you guys on Apply, or did you already click it? No, you didn't? Okay, just go ahead and click OK. Go ahead and click OK, and then go to Start, Internet Explorer, and then you should see at the top, whatever the browser site you're going to, it should say at the end of it, by your first and last name. Okay? You can also customize in here a certain logo to show up besides the blue E on the upper left corner of IE in here. So if you had a logo for the company that you wanted to put in here, that would be done here by double-clicking on Custom Logo. You could actually browse out and find that custom logo. Animated logos like GIF images, you could do that as well. And then browser toolbar customization, you can do a toolbar background bitmap. or you can delete existing toolbars if present. To take away what we've just done, you just double click back on browser title, uncheck custom title bars, click OK, and then test to make sure, you'll have to close the browser out if it's open, test to make sure that it's right back the way it was. Okay? But during that whole test there, our example, you'll notice we kept this open. Because again, we've locked these computers down pretty good, but at home you're going to have a whole slew of things to do. Okay, you can, like I said, you can whitelist everything but Notepad or something. Okay, or just whitelist Notepad and everything else is blacklisted, basically. So you'll have a lot more options to play with when it comes to the left side here, underneath user configuration and local computer policy, both. And there are whole Bibles of using Group Policy Editor, but just to make note, always keep it open while you're testing. And then with the window open, you test it, and then make sure if you don't like it, put it back. Or if you do like it, you can save it. Let me show you how to do that. So up here, if I go ahead and go up here to the very top of local computer policy, this very top one here, and I right click and export list. If I export this text file, it's going to export everything that's in my group policy editor, from computer configuration to user configuration. Now let me talk about that for a second. User configuration is users that log into this computer, okay? Users that log into this computer, because what I could do is I could modify the script on this login to do whatever I want it to do, but I could put catches in there and say, okay, administrator, you're going to bypass everything and let them get into whatever. So user configuration is per user on this machine, and it gives you a standard here. And then the computer configuration would apply to everybody. This was individual, this would be everybody. Now if you have Active Directory in your machine, on your network, it's going to override what you have on a local machine. Active Directory will. And so just beware of that. But what generally network admins will do is they will create a local group policy for a machine once they put all the software on there for that installation, for that business. Create the local policy on a machine. Then on Active Directory on the network, you import that group policy for those group of users. And then every time they log into any computer on your network, it drags down that group policy to those computers. Okay? Every time. So you could have a group policy for every single department, and they get to do this and they don't get to do that. All right? They could have different login scripts, different things happening, all within a group policy. And so generally group policies are created locally during an install, but then once this computer here that I'm working on is ready to go for all the businesses to use, I image this, I save this group policy first the way I like it, then I image this computer and then put it on all these other computers I have in my business, and then this group policy then goes into Active Directory and it's dragged down by logging in, just logging into that computer, that group policy is dragged down to that machine. Okay? So group policy editor is very powerful. If you do play with it at home, make sure you keep it open while you're playing with it, and because you can get locked out of the entire PC. Okay? I've done it, believe me. You can do it. Okay? You can lock yourself out. You say, you shut down the machine, you log back in, you're like, I can't do anything. Can't get into group policy editor even. And so that's not good. And so group policy editor is definitely one way to give users those group policies that they need for, and the rights that they need, so they can get their work done. Here's an example of maybe you've seen something like this on your work computer. We have them downstairs. It's the user acceptable use policy is what it's called. Here it's called review of user access rights. And acceptable use policy is here is the user rights will be reviewed regularly by IT security manager. External audits will be done at least once a year. Organization will institute a review of all network access rights every 6 months. Any lapsed accounts that will be disabled and deleted within 3 business days. Organization will institute a review of access to applications once a year. This will be done in cooperation with application owner. Will be designed to positively reconfirm all users. So what this means is a lot of businesses will send a spreadsheet to all managers and say, here's all the programs we use, check the ones you use. If you don't use these, you're going to be disabled from getting access to them. Okay? And managers have to do it every year. They have to fill these out as an example. Okay? And so the IT security manager gets that list, and then what they will do, once the IT security manager gets that list, is they will then update the rules on the network or on that Active Directory with the group policy editor. They don't get access to these programs anymore. Okay? So if accounting doesn't need AutoCAD, they can't access AutoCAD. AutoCAD doesn't need maybe, I don't know, what's a popular financing software? You guys know probably more than I do. QuickBooks, there you go. So maybe engineering doesn't need QuickBooks, except to maybe balance their checking account. So they don't need that, so they're going to disable QuickBooks, because what's the reason behind all this enabling, disabling software? Those of you that maybe you purchase software for businesses maybe, or for a business, or you've heard of people doing it. What's always tied to software purchasing? Licensing, right. So if I have 100 users and only 20 of those users are ever going to use that software, I need to make sure and manage who has access to the software. Because some softwares tell you you can only have 20, you buy 20, but you can literally load it on every machine, it'll run fine. Okay? It's up to you to manage it. Then there's some softwares though that literally will manage those licenses for you. An example would be like Quark Express is a graphic design software, and it runs off, part of it runs off a network. The only part that runs off the network is the authentication for the licensing. So if I buy 30 concurrent licenses for Quark Express, and concurrent means 30 people, I can have 100 people in my place of business, but only 30 can be logged on to Quark at one time. If I'm number 31 and I start Quark, it'll start Quark, hit the server, and come back and say, you've exceeded the amount of users, please wait and you can customize that message, please wait to open up Quark Express or try again later, something like that. Okay, so it manages the licenses for you. But a lot of softwares today do not manage it for you. It's up to you to manage to make sure you're in compliance. Because there is such things as software police. There's businesses in town have been fined hundreds of thousands of dollars found out that they've been out of compliance for multiple softwares. And these are companies that can afford the software, but don't buy the correct amount of licenses. And somebody turned them in to there's multiple places you can turn them into. Microsoft's one you can turn them into. There's also a lot of websites you can turn them into, and basically there's common your business, and there's companies that's all they do is look for, their whole mode of operandus is come into a business to see what their software license is on everything. And companies pay them to do it. Companies that have these softwares pay them to do it. Because if they don't have, it's going to save them money, or, if they're losing money if 10,000 companies are out of compliance. And so they get fined and it's generally a fine is more than just what the license would be. Like I know a company here in town was fined $120,000 last year for being out of compliance. And it's a multi-million-dollar company. But one of the IT folks had been on them about getting the correct amount of license. They never did. They never got approved, never got approved, never got approved. They finally turned them in to the software police, and finally somebody visited the plant and fined them $120,000. And this person who turned them in did get a reward for doing it. And and they have their own lawyers and everything. And so it's a serious thing. And so if you're ever in that position, which you will at one point in your life probably be some type in that position to where you'll be like, you know, we purchased 100 licenses, but we're using these on 110 computers. That's not right. I can't do that. We need to purchase the other day. They go, well, just 10 man, who cares, right? You can say, you know, you can share with them the story I just shared with you, how they can be fined, and the company has to pay for it. Okay, that fine. Now you could be fired if you didn't remind them of that, but if you've reminded them of that and documented that and had emails and documented and kept those emails, if they did fire you, you could use that in court to help you whether sue them or at least get back pay till you find a job. And so it is important to have these rules in place for licensing, for people leaving the business. What are we going to do? How often, how long are we going to have them on the network before we delete their account? All these things are important. Like people put personal stuff on their computer. You have to have a rule of what's going to happen to that personal stuff on their computer. What are you going to do with it? You have to have some type of rule set up, process and procedure set up of transfer of all this stuff, because it can be brought before court if you don't have it. So it's good to go ahead and have these rights already done. So when you're reviewing rights to users, you're reviewing user rights for logging in the network can be performed on the network server. Reviewing user permissions over objects can be viewed over a network server. Using Active Directory. Doesn't say that in the book, but that's what you'll be using, will be Active Directory to determine. Because inside of Active Directory, you can see all computers. Click on those computers, see the people that have been logged into it. You can even see applications that are installed, all within Active Directory. Here are some examples of different permissions. I won't go over this. It just goes everything from read permissions to full control. Group policies. We've mentioned that already. I'll talk about baselining, setting up a computer and baselining it, setting up a security template from one computer. And the way I've done it and the way a lot of admins do it is they set it up on a computer locally the way they want it and then export it from that computer, then import it into Active Directory. An Active Directory we do offer here on campus. It's an 8-week course. I do recommend you taking it. If you're not familiar with Active Directory, you will be using it a lot in networking, and so I definitely recommend you doing that. In Active Directory, when you go to set up your Active Directory tree, they have what's called GPOs, or group policy objects. GPOs are such things as users, user accounts. Then you also have objects like file servers, switches, groups, all considered objects, printers. Now, the deal with objects when it comes to security is it's like a tree. What's the very bottom of a tree? What's at the very bottom of a tree in the ground? The root, right? The root of the tree. That's considered the name of the company, the root of the tree. And so ABC company would be the root of the tree, we could say. Then you start going up, you've got the trunk, right, which goes into what eventually? Branches. Those branches are then, could be launching out into different departments, you could say, of the business. So ABC company has Department 1, Department 2, Department 3, Department 4, branches out into that. Can you add anything into a branch? And if you can, what can you add into a branch or from a branch? What comes from a branch on a tree? A leaf, right? And a leaf would be such things as, or let's stop at a branch first. Can you add branches to branches? Definitely. So within a branch called Department 1, I can add in Department 1 multiple groups in that department. Okay, I can be a group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. And each one of those groups, I can then add leaves, and those leaves are such things as a user. A user's a leaf. You can't add to a user. A printer's a leaf. You can't add to a printer. A server is a leaf. You can't add to a server. A switch is a leaf. You can't add to a switch. A router is a leaf you can't add to a router. Okay, does that make sense? So groups, you could say, in Active Directory sense, they are virtual things, but they are out there on the network. It's a virtual folder. It's not real. You can't touch it, but you create it in Active Directory. Okay, you create that group called Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4, and then each one of those groups, you add the users for those groups that are going to be in there, and then each one of those groups has certain rights for those users, and that's where Active Directory comes in, and that's where Group Policy Editor comes in. I can have separate group policies for each group. Okay? If I want to change it, I change it in that Group Policy Editor. It changes it for everybody in that group. So if I, for instance, say you guys can't access in Group 1, they cannot access AutoCAD anymore. I just go into the Group Policy Editor and I put that in the blacklist of applications that can't access if they're in this group. Okay? I can make one really stringent. I can make Group 2 say you can only access Word, Internet Explorer, Microsoft Excel, and that's it. That's all you can do. It won't let you install programs. I won't let you download files, and you can do that. It can all be done easily in Active Directory and using Group Policy Editor. You don't need any real fancy programs to do it. It's already built in to Microsoft Office, Microsoft Network Operating System with Active Directory. Now, are there programs that let you block things? Definitely, but it's already built into the network, so why not use that with Active Directory and Group Policy Editor? Because Group Policy Editor literally can be as stringent as you want it to be or as loose as you want it to be. But I will say it takes a lot of work to do Group Policy Editor. That's probably why people buy the third-party type software, because they can just unbox it, plug it in, and say, I don't want this, start checking stuff. An example would be like Barracuda, which is a great appliance, because with Barracuda, you can not only block email, spam, but you can set up block web filtering, but you can also block programs from running on local clients in Barracuda. Real easy. They make it real easy. But it's like a $15,000 appliance. A lot of companies aren't going to be able to afford, right, out of the box. And so by using Active Directory built in to Windows Network Operating System, you can do a lot of these things right out of the box and configure them. And so manipulation is easily done through group policy and a template on each one of the groups. I know there's a bug flying around too, sorry about that. Where's it at now? Oh, was it? Okay. Who knows? Oh, there it is. Is it one of those annoying ones? What's the name? What's they called? Yeah, it's still around. Jeez. Man. Okay, I'm going to end on this one here, which is a life cycle of auditing. Basically, this is where IT departments kind of fail at, is storage and retention is one, and data classification. Storage and retention is the one I really want to camp on, because there's been a lot of laws passed recently on keeping so many years of email stored on network servers. In fact, in Illinois, they suggest strongly all businesses, education facilities, store up to 7 years of email for legal purposes to pull up later. And so when you come to life cycle of storage and retention, you have some type of strategy for maintaining it. For instance, backup tapes. You have also now the advent of backing up to the cloud that's recently come to fruition, and a lot of businesses are starting to do that. And retention policies, and that actually has to do with how long are we going to keep whatever, whether it be email, whether it be, and that's generally what we're talking about is email. Because email is the only thing I can think of in a business that's fluid, constantly fluid. And if you think about it, 98% of emails coming in are spam. And when you think, well, those are deleted, right? No, they're not. They're not deleted. They're put in the spam folder, but they're not deleted. And by law, you can't delete them. Right? How many has something go into spam and it not be spam? Anybody? Okay, so by law, you cannot just go delete spam just because it says it's spam. All right, you have to keep it in the backup procedures with the other 2% that are actually good emails. And so that grows quickly over time. Now, do all businesses apply themselves to the 7-year rule? No, they don't. It's been suggested. It's not a law or anything. Now, the law has come down on a lot of businesses when they've been sued or whatever, saying, you know, if you would have had your email backed up or had your email to prove whatever it is you said, we could have done something, but you didn't have it, so we couldn't do it. Or vice versa, because they got rid of it, the person suing them couldn't prove their point in court or whatever, because they couldn't get the emails been deleted. So it's a two-way street. Sometimes helps the businesses, and sometimes could hurt the business to have those emails backed up 7 years. And so you will hear a lot of that 7-year term when you go into networking full time. That's nationwide what a lot of companies are doing or pushing for anyway. The average though is 2.5 to 3 years on average of emails being stored, and that's it. After that, they dump them, get rid of them. Some of them even go a year, and that's it. I would say a lot of them go a year. Probably 40–50% of companies probably go a year of storage, and after that year of storage done, now you can have your backup. You have your own copy on your machine, possibly, and back that up in an archive. But you can imagine the amount of email, how fast it would grow with 98% of those emails being spam coming in. And so this is a real kind of sticky one, but it's something that you need to discuss and determine what is our retention policy, and really has to do with cost too, if you think about it, because storage is getting cheaper, definitely, than what it used to be 5 years ago, but it's still not, with the economy the way it is, you want to make sure and you're being a good steward of the funds you do have. And so if you're wasting terabytes of space on data that maybe you would never use or could be used for other purposes, that storage should be used for other purposes, then you might rethink your life cycle. So some companies actually have no storage life cycle retention policy whatsoever, and when the hard drives gets full, they just go in and go, I wonder what we can get rid of. Just go and start looking at stuff to get rid of. And generally, the number one way people do it is how you think. How do you think they determine what to get rid of? Just off the top of your head, what do you think? Oldest could be one, definitely, yeah. What else do you guys think?
How often it's used.
How often it's used could be another one. These are both good. Anything else you can think of? You have a whole bunch of files in one folder. What's the easiest way to get rid of a lot of space? The biggest file. That's the number one they do. They click on the size column, and say, well, gee, they got 4 500 gigabyte files there. Delete. That's scary, isn't it? But that's the way a lot of files are deleted, and people get spaces by doing it that way. You would think it'd be, as you guys mentioned, if it's used lately, the date. Those are logical ways to do it. But normally it's the size, because guess what? If it's a date thing, I might have to get rid of 150 files and actually handpick them and get rid of them. If it's a last use thing, same deal. I got to go into each one, look at the modified date to figure out, I can click on sort by modified and sort by date, but it's going to take more files to get rid of. I'm going to have to get rid of more files than just the 2 or 3 big files I get rid of right now. So that's generally what happens. And so you think, well, you're probably thinking, well, if that's the case, is there files deleted sometimes that maybe shouldn't be, and 6 weeks down the road, somebody needs that file, it's gone. I don't know where it went. All right? And so file management will help you with that, and lifecycle management will help you with that, because you can actually put a date on things, or it might, so as you mentioned here, when it was last used, last modified. Maybe go by that. If a file hasn't been modified or accessed at all, and you can determine both in Windows Network, you can determine if a file's been accessed, because that is a property by the way, in a file is accessed. If it's been accessed or modified, say in 4 years, if a file has not been accessed or modified in four years, we're going to get rid of it on site, and we're going to maybe store it off site for another 2 years. If it's still not used in those 2 years, we're getting rid of it altogether. Would be an example of a strategy, okay? A real quick strategy, easy strategy to go with. Because you can determine on Windows and even in Mac and Linux, a couple properties easily determine when a file's been opened last and if a file's been accessed at all, okay, and modified. And so it can be done. All this stuff, though, takes time for sure, and there are out-of-box solutions. Like a number one solution, I'll tell you, as we end, that's a really popular one that business uses, HP. HP has a out-of-the-box solution of backup, security, life cycle of files, the whole gamma, everything, just disaster recovery, which is also part of what we're talking about here in this chapter. It has all that and packaged in one nice little package for you. Now, it's expensive, but the businesses don't have to start from scratch and do everything themselves. HP comes in and says, okay, fill out this form, and it's online, of your file structure, of your importance of email. You fill out a whole bunch of other forms for them. They take that information, query it, put it through their system, and say, okay, here's the plan. Here's your plan for backup. Here's your plan for file retention. Here's your plan for disaster recovery, all packaged. And they can generally go in a medium-sized business for about 15 grand and do that, which it really isn't too bad, because it does take a lot of time individually to go through and do this, and to do it right. Here on campus, we use HP, I know. A lot of businesses use HP, and HP's disaster recovery is probably the best out there, because what they do here is they have a yearly disaster recovery plan where they go to Colorado, take all the backups with them. They go to the HP complex there in Colorado and restore the data on the servers there, set up the voice over IP phones, and then they have some folks here in Rockford and the surrounding area that are set up in remote sites, and they try to get it all back up and going within 24 hours once they land. That way, if something happened at campus, we could be up and going, financial data and structure-wise, places around Rockford where we could actually be, you know, if it happened on Friday and something happened on campus, all the buildings burned down, God forbid, we could actually be back in business by Monday. No financial records would be restored, data would be restored. And they have to do this each year because it is a pretty important thing if you think about it. Most people don't want to think about it, but it's one of those deals you have to think about. And so, but every business, regardless how large or small, should have some type of disaster recovery. I'll end with one story of a student here at Rock Valley that I had that had a computer. It was a Mac computer that they had all their files stored on for the entire semester. It was like in October, November, I think it's November, their computer crashed and lost all the data, all the programs, all the work they had done. Asked them this semester, are you backing up? Because we went through a backup procedure, how to do it. Nope, not backing up, back to the same place, computer getting slow, getting sluggish, signs of maybe crashing. And so, and you know, you think about it, you think, well, that's really, you know, bad of that person to do that. It's normal, you know, quote, you know, it's basically modus operandi for most businesses, right? That's how they function. As long as they're getting their work done, they don't think about it, right? It's just going to be there tomorrow. But when that first time it's not there, and if you've never had it happen, I don't want you to, but if you ever do have it happen, I've walked into businesses that didn't have a backup plan when I first walked in, and within a week, this one business has lost everything. All their contact database, everything. They had to manually enter it in the next 2 months, working all weekends till 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I helped them do it. And all it was a simple, all they needed was a simple, at that time it was a zip drive I told them to get. They got a simple 100 meg zip drive to back up their Access database every night because they didn't have any backup whatsoever. They've been going for like 8 years. And it would crash the week I got there. But that just tells you, that it's going to happen to all systems, regardless how good it is, and how, good the hardware is or good the software is. Systems crash, hardware's crash, they become corrupt. So you're going to have backups. And so you're going to have a backup recovery to restore that when it does happen. Not if it happens, but when it happens, okay? So Thursday, no class Thursday. You're going to do the lab. Let me make mention of that real quick. The lab, there is some questions in the lab. Let me get to that real quick here. The TrueCrypt lab you'll download, and there's a tutorial once you download it that you can run on your PC at home. It only has you use like 5 megs of space on your computer, I believe, in the tutorial. But at the end of it, you'll learn how it works, answer these 3 questions, and then you're done. Okay? Any questions? All right, well, I guess I'll see you guys next Tuesday. All right? And I'll see some of you in a few hours.